people tend to look back to move forward.
I think some of the music coming out now is as good as it's ever been.
We can literally change atmospheres and change things through music.
The energy at the moment with the pandemic has been so raw.
We're like 20s and it just feels like we're just missing the best years. And
we're just trying to make the most of it, really.
I think it's inevitable that there's going to be a huge illegal rave scene again.
I've been really disappointed.
People's lives are at risk.
It's tough being stuck inside all the time.
We're just ready.
Music brings people together, as it should. It's a way of escapism. If they don't like their job, if they don't like what's going on at the moment, if they don't like the government, they're able to express themselves when they're in the raves. They're able to express themselves when they're meeting other people and are able to dance the night away. Look at obviously the UK and obviously back in the day, the whole acid house movement and what that was based on. Gay people, black people, white people all like mixing in for the love of acid house.
Rave has always channeled that same energy to an extent. You know, some may have been lost, but there'll always be that core value to it, which is kind of just like, come to the rave and just forget about everything.
If you look back at all the periods where there has been a burst of illegal raves, it's usually around something politically happening, high unemployment. These all lead to people looking for an escape. It's like escapism, essentially. Music is part of our DNA.
It's very tribal, it's very ancient.
All I saw was a community of people that wanted to dance, being free, organising yourself outside of the system.
Britain was a very grey place, I think, in the 80s.
We're talking about Thatcher years, we're talking about coming out of the miners' strike, poverty, criminal justice bill, poll tax riots as well. We had mass civil unrest.
At the time, I was going like loads of these warehouse parties, funk and soul, rare groove, early hip-hop and that sort of stuff.
All jazz dancing, footwork into jazz funk. In about 87, I noticed this thing started bubbling up.
1987, they started playing house at some of these events.
People like Frankie Knuckles, Ron Hardy, Larry Levan.
Sort of 16, 17-year-old kids from Chicago and Detroit who just went and bought a drum machine, made a little cassette. And the next thing you know, everyone's going crazy and they're like, you know, what the fuck?
I fell in love. It was the shock of the new, hearing tracks like Adonis, No Way Back, sounded like nothing else.
The energy of the club changed with the mass consumption of drugs, the same drug by everyone. So the energy becomes a collective one.
Just turned into this explosion of effervescence.
Once acid house exploded, raves got really big. Turn the corner in this dark country lane and there'd be like this wonderland in front of you.
Within about a few months, they were having like headlines about drug-crazed parties with people on ecstasy dancing all night, which is probably partly true. I'm not going to deny that.
Black, white, gay, straight, older, younger, kind of working class, posh, all mixed together.
Changed. Everything's changed.
Ecstasy, Ibiza, clothing, a moment happened and it turned what was a little seed into a much bigger thing. There was just this beginning of a movement.
I think finding out about the raves was half the fun. You buy your ticket not knowing where you were going. On the night, you'd all go to meeting points like motorway service stations. You'd all be sitting in the car park and running to the phone boxes every 5 minutes to ring in to kind of a phone bank that was giving out information. And then suddenly somebody would yell, it's on, because they'd have got in and found the address. And by the time the police saw everybody moving, it was already too late to stop them.
I always find it quite hard to be a part of social situations, and like growing up, I had a lot of kind of like toing and froing between being kind of mentally healthy and not, and being in like parties just really made me feel a part of something.
I'll never forget this. There was a lot of racial tension back then. When the whole house music thing broke, you had a mixing of people. You had football hooligans, being really friendly because the ecstasy hit the football supporters as well, which changed their whole mentality. So you had punks, you had reggae boys, you had soul boys, you had house music heads, everyone under the same roof.
An environment that was loud and that was like exciting and had people that you'd never met before, but at some point you just couldn't help but feel with them.
You get home from the rave and your head's still vibrating, you can still feel everything through your body. And then you get in bed and you lie down and it feels like the vibrations from the bass are still going through your body and it makes you too excited to sleep. You just sing yourself to sleep, your own personal little lullaby.
The inspiration behind this tune is kind of mid to early 90s, like New York tribal house and early proto hard house in the UK. Everyone's always looking back at these kind of eras, like rave, Chicago house, Detroit techno. For me, like making this kind of music is like dreaming of these clubs and these spaces that I have in my head and trying to translate that into something that can work for now and work for new audiences that may not have heard that in the past. I've been kind of digging for old school sample CDs from like mid to late 90s. So I've been going on eBay and finding all of those bits. So the vocal is this sample. Can you feel it? I just like to find the little nuggets from yesteryear.
I definitely find myself referencing things from that era. There's elements in it that definitely feel nostalgic. I was born in the 90s, so a lot of that seeped into my subconscious.
In dance music, there's always kind of been rules, you know, because you have to make people dance.
That sort of thing is rave science, you know, because I feel that encapsulates our music the best. Like, we try to take elements from all, you know, aspects of rave, and I mean rave in the more like open word, you know, everything from garage to actual 90s rave to even drum and bass and jungle. The breaks and things that have been used since the 90s, they're still accessible. They're more than accessible now. But our sort of style is to take that and then layer in more individual samples and more other stuff just to give it our own sound.
You can have a listen. The classic is the Apache.
James Brown, the Amen, drum loop, like these are all legendary sounds.
So many legendary breaks.
I mean, God knows what was going on in the studio that day, because that is some actual magic.
These breaks and these drums have such a history that's been built up over such a long time.
is beautiful. And the thing that always surprises me about rave music is that those small selection of drum breaks kind of are the sound.
People tend to look back to move forward. It's the sort of same with any kind of fashion. What I love at the minute is when I do go outside, I see these teenagers dressed completely in 90s gear. And I'm like, yes, I really would have worn those wide leg trousers myself if I'd had them at the time, you know?
Almost as seen as this authentic sort of time. I mean, partly, I guess that's just the way that style, culture and music works in like these sort of 25, 30-year sort of cycles. And at the moment, the early 90s is like a real era to look back on.
A lot of the stuff that we bought early on, a lot of stuff that house music was made on was sort of cheaper, sort of second-hand Roland and Korg and Yamaha kind of stuff because it was available. This was something, though, an Oscar. We had one of these, and this was brilliant. Really gritty, aggressive, sort of sounding machine. Great for lead lines, but also great for really big, clanging kind of bass lines as well.
Acid house basically is two machines. It's a 909 and it's a 303.
909.
The 909 I use it on everything.
909.
A Roland 303 bass machine.
Roland 303.
303.
When I bought my 909, it was a cheap drum machine that nobody wanted because everybody wanted big digital drum machines. You know, and I remember sort of having to put up with this thing, making the sort of early house music with it. And then I heard sort of Detroit techno and just went, oh, hang on, they're using the same equipment as me. And you just sort of realise they're in the same boat. They're buying up all this cheap equipment and it's the same stuff that nobody else wants.
I think how it first came about, it was almost accidental because they were using the 303 how it wasn't supposed to be used.
So people buy them and realise that when they break down, when you remove the batteries out and they do this kind of weird abstract sort of wackle, 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 kind of polyrhythmic thing, and you put that over a drum machine and it's just sort of, it's so dancey, it's a really powerful sound. That's when it started to really notice that there's a sound forming here.
By middle of 88, I would say every DJ going didn't think it was going to last longer than about a year. You know, it was just like, this is insane, this can't go on. It'd be stopped, whether that's by the authorities or just by people running out of steam. You know, the idea that people could carry on like this longer than a few months was insane.
Lights, lasers, fairground, and it's like, you know, we found it. And then you just park anywhere and run across the fields. And if the police were in the way, you just ran straight at them. Usually in such numbers that they just looked terrified and ran, or they were just completely powerless to stop you. But as soon as there were enough of us in the party, it was safer for the police to let it go on than to stop it.
Ecstasy did change it in a good way for me, in the sense it just made it this bizarre, tribal, transcendental experience, which I'd never seen before, you know? There's dancing and going out and loving your music, and then suddenly this has changed the world, as we thought at the time. Whether it did or not, you know, that's another question.
Nothing sells papers like a combination of young people, drugs, and excessive behaviour. Acid house was kind of a gift for the tabloids. And it was a symbiotic relationship because the raves needed the tabloids as well, because when they started doing scandal stories about the big raves, where it was like Wild sex parties, people biting the heads off pigeons, ecstasy rappers all over the floor. You might as well have put full-page adverts going, every youth in Britain, this is fantastic, why don't you come and join in? None of that was true, by the way. There were no beheaded pigeons. The rappers they were talking about was glitter coming down from the ceiling as a special effect. So they got it hilariously wrong, but they still made it sound so exciting.
Tabloids start talking about it, and kids in small towns were able to see what was happening and wanting to get in on it. In the space of 6 months, it just shifted massively. You had these huge events. We're here at Heaven Now, huge events here, like everywhere, even small high street clubs. Everywhere was doing rave.
When it comes to electronic music, there's been so many key black artists that have basically elevated and moved the scene forward that it's kind of stupid to not say electronic music is not of black origin. And when obviously something is ours, it unfortunately does get tarnished. So I think, annoyingly, classism and racism will always unfortunately be within music. People can't fucking help themselves with regards to kind of looking down on things. But then obviously not true music fans to be doing that.
The whole thing's been whitewashed. I think that the history is always a counterculture, which is never allowed into the mainstream. So for me, I think the whole culture has been stamped on for too long a time.
What you got to remember is with one of my genres, obviously jungle, that became heavily politicised, mainly because I guess any sort of music of a black origin often gets painted with like a bad brush.
I think outside the scene, it's probably still seen in like, to some degree, it's a negative light, definitely from like the government and stuff like that. I don't think they ever changed their views from illegal raves to like legal. They probably still think it's nonsense, not a real job, not a real thing, not a real, not a valid experience, not a valid industry. Like, that's the vibe I get anyway.
This government in place, they've never really been about protecting the arts, as it were. I think, obviously, to put it quite bluntly, the arts to them is not necessarily music-led, or at least electronic music-led.
People in the world of art, music, they understand it, they understand how important it is, but it's the powers around it that want to remove it. They know how powerful it is. They know how strong it is. It's another language. It's how we can communicate, and we can literally change atmospheres and change things through music.
And that is what rave culture essentially is and encompasses. It's about, coming together and being like, wow, this is such a fucking beautiful moment.
I think music is spiritual. The way dance music is formed kind of has a tribal root, kick patterns, keep people going. So I guess there is something rooted spiritually in it.
The urge to get together, listen to music and dance is primal.
And it's really difficult to describe it without sounding like some fucking shaman from Glastonbury on acid. But there is something intrinsically human about it. It's something that we've always done. Dance to repetitive beats, or whatever drum it is. It's always happened and it always will.
Someone plays a track that you all have some sort of relationship with, unspoken relationship with, and you're on the same dance floor, and they play this track, and then suddenly, connected.
From 1989 onwards, there were a series of kind of debates in Parliament and changes to the law to try and clamp down on this huge scene.
The Criminal Justice Bill criminalised outdoor illegal free parties. Part of the law was you were not allowed to play music with repetitive beats. That's actually in the parliamentary law.
The government got really scared by the fact that, some guy sitting in his house with a phone number could mobilise 20,000 people.
What ended up happening was, instead of clamping down on the clubbing, they started giving licences to legal all-night clubs So people like the Ministry of Sound, like Cream in Liverpool, started getting all-night licences.
And finally, you could go out all night. But guess who owned the Ministry of Sounds? It was one of the Tories' mates.
Even though kind of mainstream commercial clubbing sort of went into the cities and into these big venues, which started turning into brands themselves and selling lifestyle, there was a whole bunch of people who'd been kind of politicised by the movement and wanted to stay marginal.
Money changes everything. The mainstream are brilliant at assimilating underground and creativity and churning it out and making it theirs, making money from it. The underground always exists. At the height of EDM, some of the most exciting times I've ever spent in Berlin were happening at the same time. These things coexist, so they're connected, but they don't negate each other. You know, the dominant commercial world can create sometimes the very thing that makes the underground stronger, but those things will always exist as two opposite yin and yang things, and I think they'll always exist like that. We're just holding on till we can come back. And that's what seems to be the intuitive stoic march of this country. People are doing that, and that's a brilliant thing, because you have to do that.
Will everything get back to normal?
A very tough time.
We're all drained.
It's just a natural release to want to get out and socialise again.
A lot of jobs to go. Lives are at risk.
The energy at the moment with the pandemic has been so raw and just really sad, I think, for a lot of people just stuck at home and not being able to see their friends. Unfortunately, people have lost people this year, this year and last. And it's just that interpersonal kind of thing is not there.
It's tough being stuck inside all the time. It's tough not being able to go out and live your life as normal.
I've been really isolated. A lot of friends like myself lost a huge amount of work.
I guess it's one of those things you can't help, but I feel quite sad for the clubs and just for my friends who are DJs as well that don't make money from music, just from DJ, and they've kind of had to move back home, like they've lost their homes and they're in like a pit of despair, and I feel really bad for them.
The challenge is everything's shut down. That can't be blamed on anyone other than the disease, so we shouldn't blame anyone, but that's the way it is.
At the start of lockdown, there was a wide consensus that this is wrong, you should not be doing this, and I think a lot of people responded to that, but now I'm just like, you can't allow people to fly all around the world, but then a rave community and a DJ can't earn his living because apparently that's dangerous and that's wrong.
I think we're already starting to see a surge in parties, aren't we, really? So, yeah, I think there'll be more, but I guess the fining and the government cracking down on it will make it difficult, but I don't think it will stop them.
I think, well, I know that I've been really disappointed that people have still done it during the pandemic, you know, really disappointing because it's just so risky. And I think just sacrificing that high for other people would have been a better choice, do you know what I mean? But I can see why it would be really hard not to keep doing that.
I feel mixed. I'm very worried about the way people are throwing them under the bus nationally. I think for 50-year-old men to moralise online to 18-year-olds about not going out is bollocks, because there is a need to go out. So I understand it. So I don't think they should be criticised or exposed on social media like they have been by people who are themselves anxious.
At the minute, the police are doing whatever they can within their power to prevent raves from happening. They've got algorithms on social media to find out about raves, and they're full force trying to shut them down. There's new government legislations now that really prevent people from being able to do parties. 10 grand fines involved, potential loss of all your equipment. So it's more difficult than ever now to be able to do parties, but fortunately the scene is still alive and people are still willing to be able to do it.
£10,000 for someone who's having a party in his house, you know, I'm pretty sure that they would start using, you know, these laws and sentences on anyone putting on anything.
That's the worrying thing for me, because I kind of feel like this 10K fine thing isn't going to go away. I've got a feeling they put that in during the lockdown because they could, and it's like the perfect opportunity for them to try and clamp down on something. And I've got a feeling after lockdown or after COVID's been and gone, they ain't going to retract that.
We'd all get a fine because we're all organisers, and with the amount of people in the group now, I think there's about 8 people, that's 80 grand between us all, and we can't afford that.
For a lot of people like us, we're like 20s, 21, 22, we're in like the best years of our life, and it just feels like we're just missing them best years.
It's holding on. It's just survival, and that's what it is. And in that process of survival, I think not everything will come back, and then that's a horrible thing to admit. Post-COVID, it will all explode again because real estate is fucked, which is a nightmare, but it's also good because what will happen, it will be like 1978 in New York. The city went bankrupt. There was fires. Times Square was a no-go after 6 o'clock, but out of that came Keith Haring, David Mancuso, Paradise Garage, disco, house, hip-hop, Grandmaster Flash, all that art, music comes out of cheap rent. It comes out of a difficulty, out of people facing no money, and then that's when that's when the magic happens. There's going to be huge challenges. There's going to be a lot of loss in life, in business, in DJs giving up, artists losing the will, mental health. That's the reality. That's the pessimism of the intellect. You know there's going to be some shit to deal with. But the optimism of the will is the best art, the best music came out of the darkness. And I think it's going to be a very contradictory situation where we'll go through some really dark, tragic times, but what will come out of it and what I'm hopeful for, my hope is in the fact that we'll see some incredible art, music, books, everything.
I'm excited about playing again. I've got all of this music and I've just been making it in my headphones, you know? Like, I want to play it out and I want people to experience it, you know? Like, I make the music for myself, but like, I have the audience and the crowd in my mind all of the time and how they're going to react to different parts of the song. And, like, I miss that feedback from people and the dance floor, you know?
I think in time, stuff will come back again. I think people will never lose the love for the, for the 4/4 gear, for sure.
I think the beautiful thing about music is that real music fans will always stay and survive. Footwork is always going to survive because it has real music fans behind it. Jungle is always going to survive because it has real music fans behind it. For me, I'm most excited about coming back to the clubs and just being in the environment that the music that I play should be in. I expect a lot of crying. I expect a lot of people waiting outside, having a bit of a breather because it's a lot to take in. Being around loads of groups of people, but I will really be excited to be able to drop a tune which is fucking Larry and it goes off, basically.
And that is what rave music is to me. It's that is keeping people there, taking them on a journey, pushing their feelings and their energy and getting them to experience life without the troubles of the world.
The release element, the cathartic element of being able to be in a rave and just be surrounded by people obviously that you love is a beautiful thing.